The crock pot does not just have to be for main dishes. Side dishes are amazing in here as well. We're going to make some cheesy bacon ranch potatoes in the crock pot. I've already gone ahead and cut up our potatoes. You need like 2 to 3 pounds or so of potatoes, but it really just depends on how many people you're feeding in your household. I am gonna spray my crock pot, and you could use a liner if you want to. I'm actually choosing not to just because I think it's gonna look prettier without having a liner. Don't judge. Okay, we're gonna take 1 tablespoon of butter, and this is gonna go right at the bottom of the crock pot. And then I'm going to take half of my potatoes and put those in. I'm using this Just 5 ranch packet, and we're gonna take 1 tablespoon and sprinkle all over the top of these potatoes. So if you have the big jar of ranch, you just need a tablespoon at this part, and you'll need 1 more as well. This does not pour out of here very well, does it? Okay, that's a little better. We're gonna sprinkle all over the top, trying to get it even, but not too worried about it. At some point, it's all probably gonna get mixed together. So let's take some bacon. I'm probably gonna go with about 3 pieces at this point, and we're gonna crumble all over the top of the potatoes. Oh, I don't like that though. Okay, now I'm gonna add about 3/4 cup of cheese or so. I'm not measuring this, but I do think I shredded about 3 cups, so there will be leftover cheese. But you just kind of want to coat the top with some cheese. This is not gonna be a fun crock pot to clean. I probably should have used a liner, but oh well. All right, now I'm gonna add 1 more tablespoon of butter in here. And if you want, you could cut yours up. I'm just laying it right there in the center. And now we're going to add the rest of the potatoes, creating another layer. We're gonna add another tablespoon of the ranch seasoning. So a second layer here. Y'all, it comes out of that jar so much better if you have the big jar. Okay. More bacon. I don't know if that's gonna be enough ranch seasoning. I'm just gonna add just a little bit more. That's better. We are having steak for dinner tonight. This is gonna be so perfect as a side dish to steak. All right, topping with some more cheese, probably about the same amount as last time. We just wanna make sure that we cover the potatoes nicely with cheese. All right, we're gonna put the lid on, and this is going to cook on high for about 3 to 4 hours. We'll check them and see. You can also cook them on low for 6 to 8 hours. All right, guys, we've been working in the yard, and these potatoes have been cooking. Steaks are finishing in the oven right now. Let's give these a try. Look how absolutely delicious these look. I will say, we didn't use our favorite Kerrygold this cheese because Sam's Club has been out of it, which is really disappointing. And I don't think that this cheese melts quite as well as Kerrygold. So make a note of that, but let's give them a try. Straight out of the crock pot. So good. You can taste a little bit of that ranch, and you've got the bacon and that cheese. They're nice and savory. It's really, really good, and such an easy thing to throw together and have as a side dish. I'm really excited about this next recipe. We're actually kind of over time developing this one and making it from scratch. So I'm gonna share it with you guys. We're walking our way through this one. Let's get started. I've got some bacon cooking up on the stovetop right now, so that's gonna be ready to go. The first thing that we need to do for these barbecue crock-pot baked beans is add in some Great Northern beans. So I've got some Great Northern beans here that are drained and rinsed. We used 2 cans of these Great Northern beans. Okay, so let's put all of these into the crock pot. You can also just use a can of pork and beans. That's just not my preference. So we're kind of more making this from scratch. I do have 1 cup of brown sugar. Let's empty that in there. We've got some salt. Let's add about a teaspoon of salt. And you can also add pepper if you would like. Add some garlic powder. Let's add about a teaspoon of that. So many good flavors here. Feel free to chop up some onions and add them into yours, but instead I'm gonna be using about a teaspoon of onion powder. Smelling good already. Let's add one more dry ingredient. We're gonna add some chili powder. And I know this might seem a little bit weird, but just hang with me here because we've got some flavors going on. Okay, so again, I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of chili powder. I've got some ketchup, and we're gonna add about 3 tablespoons of ketchup. And I'm also gonna add some mustard. I prefer this stone ground mustard. So we're gonna go with 1 tablespoon of stone ground mustard. If I have that left, we'll see how much we can get out of here. We're probably right at 1 tablespoon. Awesome. Now you can absolutely add molasses to yours if that's something that you regularly have. We are gonna add maple syrup. And again, I'm gonna do about 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. We also need to add in some vinegar. So I'm just using plain white vinegar. You can use apple cider if you want. We're just going with this one, and I'm gonna add a tablespoon of that. I'm gonna work on getting this all stirred together. And you can feel like if you wanna add water, that's totally fine. It's an optional ingredient here. I'm gonna start by not adding water, especially since we're in the crock pot and a lid's gonna be on all day long. We'll see how the sauce kind of forms throughout, but at this point, we are not adding water. We've got some cooked bacon, and I think overall, I'm probably gonna add about 6 pieces, but we're just crumbling it up and adding it in here. Now, this is one of those recipes that you can cook all day long for, 6 to 8 hours on low. It is already 2 o'clock, so I'm gonna be cooking this for about 3 to 4 hours on high, and I think that will be totally fine. Now, this is nice and crispy bacon. I don't know if I said that, but you do want your bacon to be crispy. I mean, it's gonna soften back up in here, but at least a little bit. Now, this next ingredient you might think is a little bit weird, but trust me on this. We're gonna add, ooh, it's still hot. We're gonna add about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of bacon grease. And you can add up to 2 tablespoons, but I think this is gonna be good for us. All right, let's put the lid on. Turn this on high for about 3 to 4 hours. All right, let's give these baked beans a try. Look how delicious they look. That sauce thickened up. If you just take your lid and set it off to the side of the crock pot for just like the last 20 minutes or so, it'll thicken up really nicely. That's pretty good. They're sweet, but if you wanna cut down on the sweetness, I would say go a little less on the brown sugar, but the flavor is on point, you guys. You can taste the little bit of chili seasoning, which almost gives them kind of a smoky flavor, and then you have that bacon, which really elevates the salt. These are good. We are gonna make a crock pot corn casserole. This is really, really easy. Plus, I mean, can it get any easier than the crock pot? I have almost a full stick of butter here, where the recipe calls for a full stick. I feel like that's close enough. Now we need this to be melted. All right, I have a can of cream style sweet corn. We're gonna add this whole can into this butter. For this whole kernel super sweet corn, we're gonna drain the liquid off of this. So we don't really want any excess liquid. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pour that off over here. Obviously you can pass that through a strainer if you really want to, but the whole can is gonna go in. The recipe calls for 8 ounces of sour cream. If you've been here for a while, you know that we always substitute Greek yogurt for sour cream. So we're gonna add about 8 ounces. I'm not measuring this, just an ish. Let's go ahead and just start to incorporate that just a little bit. Okay, now we want to add in our Jiffy corn mix. We're gonna add in 1 box. All right, we're gonna, ooh, that was almost gone. Okay, let's empty the whole thing here into our batter. Now, obviously this is kind of a sweet side, and you guys know I definitely prefer savory over sweet. We've talked about that before. I am gonna add a little bit of salt to this. I don't know that it's necessary. You can obviously do this whatever way you wanna do it, but I'm gonna add a little bit of salt just because really none of the ingredients in this have salt. So does this have sodium at all? Oh, actually the Jiffy Mix has a good amount of sodium, so maybe I won't. We'll salt after if we need to. Plus there's gonna be some cheddar cheese that's gonna go on this in the last 20 minutes of it being in the crock pot. So the cheddar cheese adds a little bit of a saltiness as well. I'm going to spray my crock pot. Feel free to use a crock pot liner, I actually have them, and go ahead and empty the whole thing into your crock pot. Okay, I'm gonna smooth it out just a little bit, and you can cook this on low. I'll have the instructions and the link to this whole thing. Oh, also this one can actually be made in the oven as well. So we're choosing to make it in the crock pot, but you can make this in the oven. I'll have the instructions listed in the description box with a link. We're gonna cook this on high for 2 to 3 hours. I'm gonna come back at the 2-hour mark, check it and see where we are, and add cheese.
Tell Calvin to get in the bath.
This has been cooking for about 2.5 hours. I'm going to take some freshly shredded cheese and about a half cup, maybe a little more. We're going to top this with cheese, put the lid back on, and then it can cook for about 20 more minutes or so just to get that cheese to melt. So you just add whatever amount of cheese you want. This is probably closer to like 3/4 of a cup. Look at this corn casserole. I love how good this looks. I will tell you that the edges got kind of done. I think that you could prevent that by doing the low version rather than high, but honestly, I'm not super upset about it. All right, let's give this a try. We've got that cheese on the top. I think if I had to do it all over again, I would probably add a touch of salt because you guys know that we prefer savory sides versus sweet sides. And this is a little sweet, but Jiffy corn mix and that cream corn, obviously it's gonna be a little bit sweet. But yeah, this is pretty good. We are going to make maple brown sugar glazed carrots. You can use baby carrots if you would like to. This recipe is a no-brainer in our house because like every other week I buy a 5-pound bag of carrots from Sam's Club because we eat them so often. So this one is so simple for me. Instead of using baby carrots, I'm gonna peel several carrots and then cut them up into pieces. Basically, I'm trying to make them roughly baby carrot size. They don't have to be perfect though. And I personally am using about 12 carrots. You wanna come out with around 2 pounds. These are all going into my crock pot, and I'm gonna add about a half teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Definitely need to have brown sugar for our brown sugar maple glazed carrots. We are adding 1/4 cup of brown sugar. I'm using this maple syrup that I always get from Sam's Club. It is a real 100% maple syrup. I think that this is a great option. We need 1/4 cup. The recipe calls for 1/3 cup of butter. I'm actually just gonna go with around 3 tablespoons of butter. I don't know that we need a full 1/3 cup. We're gonna go with a little bit less and see how this turns out. You can cook these carrots on high for about 3 hours, or you can do low, 5 to 6 hours. I've got plenty of time, so I'm actually gonna cook these on low. I would absolutely cook them on high if I had less time. We do wanna come in and stir these occasionally though, so maybe twice. I'll come back, give them a good stir, put the lid back on and continue cooking. Now, as you can see, the liquid in there looks really watery, but we have a way that we're gonna fix that. So once these are done cooking, we're gonna take the lid off and turn it on high for about 20 minutes or so, and that's really gonna help that brown sugar butter mixture to thicken up, and you're gonna get a nice glaze on these. Now, a trick, if you can't get your crock pot heated up enough to thicken up that glaze, is to take the liquid out once these are completely done cooking, transfer it to a saucepan and just heat it for a couple of minutes on high, and you're gonna get a nice glaze made. My crock pot actually heats pretty high. It's it's a super old crock pot, but it comes to a really high temperature. So this one, I'm gonna be able to just turn it on to high, and it's gonna help that sauce to thicken up. All right, let's give these a try. They're sweet, they're perfect consistency. They're not too overdone, they're not too crunchy. They're right in that range that you would want them to be. My sauce thickened up just a little bit. I do think that if you really want to thicken it up more, head over to the stovetop and just let that boil, almost like you're like sauteing it basically, and that's gonna reduce it, and you're gonna get more of a glaze with that. But the flavors are really good. I am excited to have leftovers for these and add them to my lunches. Tonight's crockpot recipe is actually going to be the side, and we are making cheesy white corn. I am only using a half bag of this white corn. Normally when I make this, I make a lot of it, but tonight it's just for our family of 4, so just the half bag. And I am adding in just a quarter block or 2 ounces of cream cheese. Again, normally I would add in a lot more. This is one of those recipes where you can turn it on low and cook it for all day and it's gonna be completely fine. I'm actually just starting this about 2 hours before dinner, so I'm gonna cook it on high for 2 hours. Now that it's been cooking for a while, I'm gonna come back and I am adding 1 slice of white American cheese. Again, we cut this recipe in half or maybe even in 4ths, but normally I would add more white American cheese than this. You can also add yellow American cheese. The crockpot recipe in this particular dinner came from my husband's college mom, I guess you could say. I had this experience too where a college family kind of took me in when I was in college, and they would cook meals for you and, you know, kind of fellowship with you and stuff. So his college mom shared this recipe with him. It is so good and so easy to make. Everybody ends up loving this recipe. I do want to make a note that we have tried this with yellow corn before, but it is so much better with white corn. If you're gonna make this, definitely find yourself a bag of white corn instead of the yellow corn, because it for some reason just tastes so much better. These cinnamon apples are so delicious and they cook in the crock pot, so you don't even have to think about them. The first thing that I need to do is get all of these apples sliced, peeled, cored, all of that stuff. And I am using about 6 apples. It's probably around 2 pounds, maybe a little less than 2 pounds. So the recipe actually calls for 3 to 4 pounds of apples. So I'm gonna be cutting the entire thing in half. I've got 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, 1/8 cup of brown sugar, 1/8 cup of plain white sugar, a half teaspoon of cinnamon, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, and a half teaspoon of vanilla extract. I've got my sliced apples here in my crock pot insert. I'm going to take the cornstarch and I'm gonna mix that with the apples really well. Next, I'm going to pour in my brown sugar, and cinnamon, and then also give that a stir to mix it well. Those are nice and coated. Now I'm gonna add in the rest of my ingredients. I'm adding in the butter, lemon juice, and vanilla. I'm gonna stir and incorporate that as well. Already, these are smelling so good. I'm gonna cook this on high for 2 hours. That's pretty good. I'm gonna have to take some of this up to my husband, who's working upstairs in his office. Bloopers are coming up in just a second, you don't wanna miss, but I wanted to tell you I'm gonna be doing a holiday appetizers videos and I want your recipes. My friend Jessica O'Donohue did this and it went off so well. She loved all the things that they were able to find and make and talk about you guys. So I would love it if you would email me. I will have the email in my description box. It's feedingbyrds@gmail.com. I need to know a little bit about you, how you came to this recipe or developed this recipe or who it's from, and send in the recipe, and I'm gonna choose several of them to make here on my channel. I would love to include yours, so make sure you send those over. Kitty, the screen is not a scratch post. No, ma'am.
Let's get my coffee ready. Just give me about 90 seconds.
No, ma'am. Nope, no, ma'am. Cincy, they're not too. Our verse today comes from Psalm 135. I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in his word I hope. If you liked this video, I highly suggest that you check out this one next.